The world of Fallout is no stranger to death. It's everywhere, so prominent that you'd have to close your eyes to not see it. But what happens after? In folklore, a ghost is the soul or spirit of a dead person or animal that can appear to the living. Descriptions of ghosts vary from a barely visible presence to very realistic lifelike forms. Throughout the Fallout franchise, ghosts have had their fair share of appearances, and here are just a few that I know of. In Fallout 2, the Chosen One can travel to the Den, a frontier town riddled with drugs and slavery. On the west side of town is the Great Ananias, a storyteller who tells that there once lived an evil magician and a beautiful princess. The princess wore an amulet that gave her powers, and the magician wanted it for himself. So the magician poisoned the princess. Whether it was through the means of magic or literal poison is never said. But the princess did take ill, and her spirit now haunts the room next door, patiently waiting for her magical amulet to be returned. Ananias also explains that she can only be seen during the witching hour. In folklore, the witching hour is a time of night connected with supernatural events. Ghosts, along with other creatures, are thought to appear at this time because it's when they're at their strongest. Some believe this time to be midnight, while others say 3 AM. I decided to go with the latter. Once the witching hour is upon us, the spirit appears and begins to walk around the room. This is the spirit of Anna Winslow. Speaking to her, we learn that while we can hear her, she cannot hear us. And after running through her dialogue, we also learn that she's not a princess, but a normal girl. The magic amulet was actually a locket, and the magician was just a thief. There is a cut piece of content, a diary that would have told us more about the ghost. Interacting with it would have prompted the message. It appears to be a diary which belonged to a young girl. The writing on the inside cover says, "Property of Anna." Most of the pages are either torn or faded, but one is still readable. Day 271. Today my mother gave me a locket. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever owned. I will never part with it. Over on the east side of town is Mum's Diner. Mum, the owner, can be asked about the haunted house, to which she replies, "The place was occupied until a couple years back, when the young man living there left without a single word as to why." Mum tries to recall the man's name but can only come up with Joseph or Joel. Back on the west side of town, the Chosen One can speak to Joey, a small-time chem dealer who used to live inside the haunted house. When spoken to, it's clear he knows about the ghost, but tries to play it off as nothing more than a bad trip. Now, depending on how you handle the conversation, Joey will either hand over the locket that he admits to stealing, agrees to sell it for a price, or will become hostile and have to be killed for it. Returning the locket to Anna will release her spirit, and where she once stood will now be a pile of bones. There's a nearby shovel in the dresser and a churchyard on the east side of town where the Chosen One can bury her, finally laying her to rest between her parents' graves. This was the earliest record of ghosts appearing in the Fallout games. Not chronologically, mind you, but the first mention in order of release date. Also in Fallout 2, the Chosen One can find a man in Klamath, Salik, a tribal warrior from the Great Salt Water. Salik can actually converse with the spirits through the means of his Grampy bone. The large bone driven through his nose is connected to the tribal lore of his family and village, with the bone acting as a catalyst, increasing his ability to speak to his grandfather and other important spirits, who give him advice that he then passes on to the Chosen One, although the advice is usually cryptic. An example of this is when the quest to return Anna's locket is still active. Salik will say that the spirits mention another bone spirit, and that the spirit needs help. It is unknown as to how Salik is able to do this, but the information is true. He could be a psychic, similar to Bloomseer Poplar and Mother Murphy, and only chooses to pretend he's communicating with the spirits to make himself more mysterious and valuable within his tribe. Or he can in fact commune with the dead. In the add-on Honest Hearts, the courier travels to Utah's Zion National Park, more commonly referred to as Zion Canyon, an unspoiled wilderness full of clean water, fresh food, and what appears to be a ferocious spirit. At the Sorrows camp, the courier can speak to Waking Cloud, a member of the Sorrows tribe, who can be asked about her Yaoguai gauntlet. Waking Cloud explains that it was made from the body of a defeated Yaoguai, and that we too can earn one for ourselves, but only if Whitebird, the tribe's shaman, allows us to undergo the rite of passage, an event that marks a person's progression from one status to another, most commonly being the transition into adulthood. With Whitebird's approval, the courier gathers a sacred root that Whitebird uses to brew a strong bitter tea, a powerful drink that allows the consumer to see the ghost of She, a unique Yaoguai residing at the Ghost Den. If the courier asks Waking Cloud about Ghost of She, they'll hear this.
That is a sad story. I do not like to tell it, but if you are asking, it must be at Whitebird's request. That I will honor. Long ago, a girl lived among this tribe. She was a curious child, and a clever one, and her mother had a devil's time watching over her. One day, the child slipped away from camp and went to play in the caves nearby. The girl did not know that a Yaoguai slept in that cave. The girl died. The tribe wept, for the girl had died before her naming day, and her ghost would remain restless and wandering upon the earth. Many hunters tried to kill the beast, but it eluded them or drove them off. The shaman said that since it had consumed the girl, the two were one. So we call the beast Ghost of She, for the child had no name to be called. That is the story of the Ghost of She. It is a sad story. It is our story.
At the Ghost Den, there first appears to be nothing, only bones, but the world brightens and the Yaoguai appears, basked in flames and much larger than other Yaoguai. During combat, the entrance to the den is lit on fire, trapping the courier inside until the fight is over, and after enough damage has been dealt, Ghost of She will divide into 4 smaller forms. Only once the original has been defeated will the battle conclude. After the dust has settled, the courier can remove a paw and return it to Whitebird, who in turn creates She's Embrace, a unique gauntlet. The gauntlet's appearance is slightly different to the standard Yaoguai gauntlet, with less blood beneath the nails and the fur removed. Now, it could be debated that this bear wasn't actually a ghost, rather a giant Yaoguai that the tribe have embellished for so long that they believe their own story to be true, and the fire was just a visual effect from consuming the Datura tea, so it's up to us to continue believing in the legend, or to write it off as nothing more than a ghost story. In the add-on Nuka world, the sole survivor can find the Granchester Mystery Mansion, a family home that once belonged to Hannibal, Morticia, and Lucy Granchester. The daughter, Lucy, was rumoured to have been possessed by an evil spirit, and whilst under its control, killed her parents. After their deaths, Lucy was committed to a mental institution, where she remained for many years until escaping shortly before her 18th birthday. Lucy returned here, made her way to the attic, and committed suicide by hanging. Sometime later, the home was converted into a tourist attraction, fitted with automatic doors that appear to open by themselves, and trick candles that mysteriously flicker to life. After the Great War, the mansion lay abandoned and untouched for several decades. That was until Zachariah, an ex-gunner, made the mansion his home, rigging the many rooms and corridors with traps to prevent intruders, but also to bag some easy loot from those who made their way inside. On Zachariah's terminal, we can read that he's been hearing a little girl laugh, and thinks it could be one of his Assaultron's voice modulators failing. While this is a logical and very reasonable explanation, that doesn't make this mansion any less haunted, and the sole survivor can have several encounters with the ghost of Lucy Grantchester, although her appearance is that of a child's, several years younger than she would have been at the time of her suicide. The very first encounter takes place before the sole survivor has even entered the home. After buying a ticket to get inside, or killing the ticket master and taking one, you can look up at the house, and staring through the window above the entrance is Lucy, silently watching and waiting for you to enter. And as soon as we do, Lucy can be seen running into a room, the door closing behind her as she goes. This happens on numerous occasions, and if followed, she'll vanish, or enter into a room that shouldn't be possible. At the very top of the house is the attic, the place she was rumoured to have committed suicide. Her ghost can be seen laughing and running away one final time, and once again, the door she passes through is a dead end. The layout of the house is also quite jarring, with many passages and staircases leading to nowhere. It is said the home was altered to confuse the spirits who haunted the grounds. Whether it worked or not is unknown, but the family did suffer horrendous deaths. Hannibal, the father, who was said to have hated his daughter after his wife almost died during childbirth, survived an attempted poisoning, but was later found under mysterious circumstances with a pair of scissors driven deep into his brain and his fingers removed, specifically the fingers of his dominant hand, the hand he used to hold his cane, the cane he used to beat Lucy with every chance he got. And Morticia, the mother, who hired a psychic to remove the evil spirits to no avail, was found dead with a doll stuffed into her mouth, the very same doll she refused to kiss goodnight. Morticia was also found with severe rope burns around her wrists, but no rope was ever recovered. I think it's safe to say that Lucy's hatred towards her parents was exploited by something much more sinister, and even though Lucy committed suicide, we still see her roaming the property. Or do we? Why is it that her form is several years younger than when she died? I think that whatever was controlling her has now taken her appearance and continues tormenting the living in disguise. After exiting the home, the ghost can no longer be seen peering from the window, nor can she be seen anywhere else. In Fallout 76, the resident can find an old, derelict church in the Maya region of Appalachia. This is Haven Church, a place where survivors gathered during the Great War. Pamela, a survivor, wrote to somebody called Tom, expressing her concerns regarding the large amount of people and rapidly decreasing supplies. She ends the note by saying that she and some other people from the church are heading out to find more food and medicine, and if she doesn't return, then it's up to him to take care of the children. It's unknown if Pamela or any of the others made it back, but we do know that Skig, the leader of a group of raiders, caught wind of Haven Church, and one of his followers, Brock, suggested that the survivors, due to their large number, would have a good amount of supplies that they could steal. Skig, along with his raiders, attacked Haven Church, and when they realized that these people had nothing to offer, Cal, a member of the raiders, opened fire, killing the entire congregation. The raiders then gathered the bodies and tossed them into the swamps surrounding the church, and Skig, as a final act of wickedness, claimed the church as his new home. Throughout December to January, the raiders attacked caravans, hunted wildlife on a daily basis, and even managed to wipe out a rival gang of raiders. And Skig notes that even though they're doing well, they're running low on alcohol, something they may have needed to drown their sorrows and to forget what they had done to those that lived here before. However, during the early days of February, Skig began to hear music coming from inside the church. At first, Skig was the only one to hear the music, and the others believed him to be hallucinating. But within a matter of days, they too could hear the music. Cal eventually determined that it was coming from the church's organs. The system that was once automatic was now malfunctioning, and they had no way of shutting it down. As time went on, the music began to attract unwanted attention from nearby creatures, including ghouls. Due to this, Skig wanted to abandon the church, but Cal was determined that they needed to dig in and fight for what was theirs. By the time the resident finds the church, the only inhabitants are feral ghouls. The raiders' bodies are nowhere to be seen. While they could have been killed, or even fled after enough ghouls had broken through, they could have also mutated from the constant presence of water around the church, and the ghouls that we see inside are actually the raiders. Skig, Brock, and Cal all destined to remain inside the church, a constant reminder of their evil doings. Only at night can the church organs be heard, but this is where it gets weird. If the church is entered, the music stops, and to make it just that little bit creepier, as the resident leaves, the music begins again, and will continue to do so until morning, when it finally stops, if only for a while. The music is a lure used by the ghosts to attract bad folk, similar to Skig and his raiders who killed them all those years ago. When the ghosts controlling the organs see that the resident is no threat, they stop, and only once the resident has left do they continue to play, luring in the next weary traveller to be judged. And if that person is deemed to be a bad soul, I have no doubt that the music would persist and creatures of the night would soon follow. There are other paranormal locations and interactions. Some are manufactured, while others are similar, but also something else entirely. And let's not forget acts of madness and chem-fueled fever dreams as well. Some of these do have explanations, while others are beyond human comprehension. Be sure to show your support by liking the video and subscribing if you haven't already for more Fallout content. If there's anything you would like to see in a later video, leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. With that said, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.